Howdy everyone. Alright, so I'm going to try to explain as best I can how I got this fuel vent line installed. It's not difficult because the line itself is very soft, so you can literally bend it by hand, with your fingers. So it's not entirely difficult, but it's just tedious, and I've got some hints I want to throw your way just to keep in mind when you get to this point. So of course I've got the fittings installed. I've got the exit there that goes out through the bottom skin. And then I've got this inlet fitting here, which ultimately gets attached to the wing. Now I elected to start at this inlet fitting just because this area in here has a lot of bends to it. And it's a little bit easier for me to fit it and then take it out and try to make a couple bends and then fit it and take it out. If I would have started at this other end here, by the time I ran it all the way around and came back to this side, taking it on and off would have been a little bit more difficult. So I started at the wing fitting. Of course, you want to make sure that your wing fitting is perpendicular or vertical. You don't want it at any kind of an angle. The very first bend, the bend coming out of the fitting right here, that is a pretty tight bend. As soon as it exits the fitting, it has to be bent around this aluminum angle here. So that bend is pretty tight. And the way that I did that is like this. I took a spare fitting like this one. This is just a straight union bulkhead fitting. And I flared the end of the tube, and then I put the tube with the nut onto this fitting and tightened it. And then I bent the tube while it was attached to this fitting. I just bent it by hand using finger pressure. That way the flared end of the tube is nice and square on the fitting. And it can't move, obviously, because you have it tightened down with the sleeve and with the nut. So it's held securely in place. And then you could use the length of this as leverage. And you just bend it right on over as it's installed. And then you could take it off of this fitting and take it back over to the airplane and fit it in place. So like I said, it is tedious because you've got to come around. You got to immediately out of this fitting. You got to bend to clear this angle, and then you got to come around the angle and go back out toward the side skin so you can clear the hole here for your rudder cable. And then you got to loop back around inboard and then up to catch this clamp. So there's a lot going on here. And at the same time, you got to move the line over from here. Let me get it in camera for you. You have to move the line from here over to here. So again, so it can catch this clamp. So you have to physically move the line toward the rear of the airplane, and you also have to do you have to do all these curves and bends within a short distance. So I think this is probably the most difficult part of the entire process. But once you get this locked down, I just worked my way up. I put in a clamp to help hold everything secure. Ran my line as straight as I can get it. Put in another clamp to hold it secure. And then I did this gradual bend all by hand. Now again, you want to keep in mind, up in this area here, this is the top longeron. All through here, you've got other skins. You've got top skins that mate with this skin in this area here. All of this needs to be riveted. So you need to leave room when you put your line in so that you can get bucking bars up in here to do these rivets. So I didn't go all the way up to the bottom of the angle. I left the line down from the angle, and I also left it out this way from the angle a little bit. You can see that here. I don't have it tucked up tight in here because all of these rivets you need access to from inside here with the bucking bar. And I left this corner nice and open because there's a rivet that you're going to have to get back here in this corner. So I left this nice and open in here. It's open in here. And like I just showed you, it's open all through here. So I can get a bucking bar in here. So keep that in mind. Here's another tidbit. I drew these markings on here just for reference, but ultimately this screw for the clamp that's underneath here, I set mine 3 1/8 inch from the firewall this way, and then from the outer edge of the skin I set it back 1 7/8 inches. So again, 3 1/8 from the firewall, and then 1 7/8 inches from the outer skin. Marked that location, drilled my hole. I came up with that location because, one, it's roughly centered from this bend to this bend. This length of tubing here, the clamp is roughly centered. And I don't know if I can get this on camera, but if you look up underneath, you've got this piece of steel angle in here. Well, it's not angle, it's just a part of the fuselage fitting for the engine mount. If you have this screw too far back or too far in, you can't get a screwdriver on it. You can't get a tool on it in here because this metal bracket is going to be in the way. So you want to have this closer to this edge so you can get a tool on it. But you don't want it so close that the tubing here sticks out. Alright, I hope that makes sense. I can't see what I'm doing a lot of times with this camera, so I'm hoping I've got that angle correct. You can see how this bracket here could interfere with this screw if you don't have this location here correct. And then you just look at the plans and you can kind of see how the line curves around. It follows the angle here, and then it comes down straight through this clamp, and then it bends around through your fitting on the floor. Now, there's an angle piece here. So when you come down with this, you kind of you come down past the angle, and then you kind of have to dogleg it in toward the side skin and then down so it can catch this clamp. This angle piece, to clear this angle piece, the tube has to be sticking out further than it does by the time it gets down to this clamp. So you have to kind of jog around this angle and then come back toward the side skin and then down to catch this clamp here. And the last thing that I can think of is, I'm going to do this from a distance. You have, where is it? You have this dog leg here that comes into this fitting. Make sure that this area of the dog leg, the bottom of the dog leg, if you will, make sure that that always runs downhill. You don't want this to come up and then kind of run downhill and then up. You want to make sure that that stays angled down so it can always drain out. You don't have anything pooling in the bottom of that dog leg. All right, so again, if you start at this end here, flare that end, put it on your fitting on a bench, tighten it down, and then use that fitting as leverage and get that initial first bend to clear that aluminum angle piece. And then you got to move the tubing over from here. You got to move it over so it can catch these clamps, and you also have to go around the aluminum, around your the hole for the rudder cable, and then back up through the clamp. Tighten the clamp, nice straight run, tighten the clamp, nice gentle curve, leaving space behind the tubing so you can do this row of rivets. Come across with a nice bend matching the angle of your gusset. Make sure you leave clearance on the bolt so that when you go to put your screwdriver on it from underneath. It does not interfere with that metal bracket that's under there for the engine mount. Bend it around again. Follow the angle of the metal fitting. Run it up against or close to the skin and then jog it out to clear this aluminum piece. Bring it back into the skin and down into this clamp. And then make your dog leg into this fitting and make sure that that dog leg runs downhill so it always drains. That's it. That's all the advice I can give you at this point. So this one is finished and installed, and I'm going to leave it just as it is. I'm going to move on to the other side, and hopefully I'll get the same result. All right. Oh, one last thing. I probably should have said this at the beginning of the video, but I'll say it a few times.